The galactic trade hub of Zerath Prime was a place where fortunes were made and lost in a single day. Ships from 100 different worlds came and went, filling the docking bays with light, noise, and the smell of burning fuel. For most travelers, it was overwhelming, but for Captain Elias Kane, it was just another stop on his long list of delivery points. Elias was a human freighter pilot, tall and broad-shouldered, with a weathered face that carried the stories of countless journeys across dangerous star lanes. His ship, the Horizon's Edge, was not the largest or the most powerful vessel in the sector, but it was reliable, and in Elias's line of work, reliability often meant survival. On this particular day, Elias was not in the best of moods. His last job had paid half of what he was promised, and the repairs on his ship had eaten through the rest of his credits. He needed a contract, any contract, if he wanted to keep flying. That was when he met Jorik, a nervous alien merchant with 4 arms, green skin, and eyes that twitched from side to side like a pair of restless insects. Jorik owned several crates of rare minerals that needed to be transported quietly to the outer colonies, far from the eyes of tax collectors. "I will pay you in full when we arrive," Jorik said, wringing his hands as if they were made of clay. "But the journey is long, and I cannot give all the credits up front. Too dangerous, too risky, you understand?" Elias crossed his arms. "I understand you want me to take the risk for you. That's not how this works. Half now, half on arrival. Standard practice." Jorik's voice dropped to a whisper. "I do not have half now, but I can offer something else. A form of payment that will keep you satisfied until the delivery is made." Elias frowned. "What kind of payment?" The alien clapped his hands, and from the shadows of the docking bay stepped a young woman. She was unlike anyone Elias had ever seen. Her skin had a faint silver sheen, glowing softly in the dim light. Her hair, pale as starlight, flowed around her shoulders like strands of silk. She wore simple cloth garments, plain and loose, but they could not hide her graceful bearing. Her large eyes, colored a deep violet, met Elias's gaze for a moment before she lowered them respectfully. "This is Liara," Jorik said proudly, as if presenting a fine piece of jewelry. "She is bonded. She will serve you until my debt is paid. A loyal companion for your journey." Elias's jaw tightened. He had heard of bonded servants before, slaves in all but name. Many cultures across the stars still practiced it, though humans had abandoned such customs long ago. To Elias, the very idea felt wrong. "I don't deal in people," Elias said firmly. "If you don't have the credits, then we don't have a deal." But Jorik pressed on. "Please, Captain Kane. She is not mistreated. She is strong, clever, and obedient. Better than credits. She will cook, clean, repair, whatever you wish. She will not cause trouble." Elias turned his eyes back to Liara. She stood still, her expression calm but distant, as if she had learned to expect nothing good from anyone. She didn't plead. She didn't beg. She simply waited. Something in Elias's chest tightened. He could see it in her posture, the quiet dignity of someone who had been forced to endure what they did not deserve. He sighed and rubbed the back of his neck. "Fine, I'll take her, but only because I know she'll be safer on my ship than here. Don't think I'm happy about this, Jorik." The merchant bowed quickly, relief flooding his face. "Excellent choice, Captain. She will not disappoint you." Elias looked at Liara again. She gave the faintest nod, almost like a bow, and followed him as he turned and headed toward the Horizon's Edge. Life on the Horizon's Edge once aboard, Elias showed Liara around the ship. It wasn't much, just a freighter with cramped corridors, a cargo hold, and a small living space. "You can use this cabin," he said, opening the door to a room that had mostly been used for storage. "It's not fancy, but it's yours, and let's get one thing clear." He looked her in the eye. "You're not a servant here. I don't care what Jorik says. You're free to make your own choices." Liara tilted her head slightly, studying him. For the first time, a flicker of surprise crossed her face. "You will not command me?" she asked softly, her voice carrying a strange melodic tone. "No," Elias said simply. "I don't own people. You can help out if you want, but it's your decision." She blinked, then looked away, almost as if she didn't know how to respond. "I understand." Over the next few days, they traveled through quiet star lanes. At first, Liara spoke little, moving gracefully around the ship in silence. She cleaned her cabin, repaired loose wires in the control panels, and prepared simple meals using supplies Elias had stored. But slowly, she began to open up. She asked questions about Earth, about human history, about why humans traveled so far from their home. Elias found himself answering more than he expected, sharing tales of humanity's struggles. The wars they had fought, the hardships they had overcome, and the dream that had carried them to the stars. "You speak of your people with pride," Liara said one evening as they sat in the mess hall. "I suppose I do," Elias admitted. "We've made mistakes, but we've always managed to get back up. That's what matters." Liara's violet eyes lingered on him for a moment, thoughtful and searching. Not all races have that gift. A shadow of the past. Despite her quiet nature, Elias could not help but notice that Liara carried herself differently than most people he had met. Even in the simplest of actions, pouring water, repairing circuits, or walking through the narrow corridors, there was elegance, almost like royalty hiding behind plain clothes. Yet, whenever he asked about her past, she turned silent. One night, as Elias adjusted the ship's course, he heard soft humming from the cargo bay. Curious, he followed the sound. There, under the dim glow of the lights, Liara stood among the crates, singing in a language he didn't understand. The melody was haunting, filled with both sorrow and hope. When she noticed him, she stopped instantly, her cheeks coloring faintly. "Forgive me, Captain. I did not mean to disturb you." "You weren't disturbing me," Elias said gently. "That was beautiful." She lowered her gaze. "It is an old song. From my home." Elias wanted to ask more, but he held back. He knew she wasn't ready. Still, a question burned in his mind. Who exactly was this woman Jorik had tried to pass off as a servant? The growing bond days turned into weeks as the horizon's edge moved deeper into the outer colonies. The journey was long and sometimes dull, but Elias found it less lonely with Liara aboard. One evening, as they prepared to drop out of hyperspace, Elias noticed Liara standing at the viewport, staring at the stars. "You ever think about what's out there?" he asked. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. "Always, every star is a story. Some bright, some fading, some waiting to be written." Elias chuckled. "That's more poetic than I usually think about it. For me, stars just mean work." Liara tilted her head. "Perhaps humans see the stars differently because they fought so hard to reach them." The silence that followed was not uncomfortable. Instead, it carried a quiet warmth, as if the ship itself recognized that something new was forming. A bond built not from contracts or bargains, but from simple trust. Elias didn't know it yet, but accepting Liara had changed his path forever, and deep within her guarded heart, Liara knew the same. For the first time in a long time, she felt safe. The hum of the horizon's edge filled the narrow corridors as it glided through hyperspace. Captain Elias Kane sat in the cockpit, staring at the stream of stars outside. His hands rested on the controls, but his mind wandered elsewhere. It had been nearly 2 weeks since Liara came aboard. In that time, the ship had grown less lonely. She was quiet, yes, but never dull. Sometimes she asked him questions about Earth, questions no one else seemed to care about. Other times, she simply listened, her violet eyes focused on him as if every word carried weight. But despite the growing trust between them, Elias knew something was hidden behind her silence. She never spoke of her past, never explained how she ended up as payment for a desperate merchant. Elias wasn't the type to push, but curiosity tugged at him every day. For now, though, there were more pressing matters. The ship's sensors beeped softly, pulling him back to the present. A faint signal blinked on the screen. Elias frowned. "That's odd." Liara entered the cockpit just then, carrying a small tray with mugs of steaming tea. She had taken it upon herself to prepare evening drinks, something Elias had grown to look forward to. "What is odd?" she asked, setting one mug down beside him. Elias tapped the screen. "We've got a shadow. Someone's been trailing us for the last hour." Liara leaned closer, studying the display, her brow furrowed. "Not a merchant ship. Too small for that," Elias nodded grimly. "Looks more like a raider-class pirates." The pirate ambush. Within minutes, the signal grew stronger. Soon, the sensors confirmed what Elias already suspected. 2 pirate vessels were closing in. Sleek ships armed with weapons that made his freighter look like a child's toy. "They'll try to board us," Elias muttered, tightening his grip on the controls. "They'll want the cargo." Liara's voice was calm, almost too calm. "Then they must not take it," Elias gave a half-laugh. Easy to say, not so easy to do. The first pirate ship darted ahead, cutting off the horizon's edge's path. The second swung around behind, trapping them. A sharp crackle came through the comms. "Freighter," a rough voice snarled. "Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Resist and you'll be spaced," Elias muttered under his breath. Always the polite type. He glanced at Liara. "Strap in." This is going to get rough, but Liara didn't sit down. Instead, she moved to the navigation console, her fingers hovering over the controls. "I know these ships," she said, her tone steady. "They are fast, but their engines overheat if forced into tight maneuvers. If you draw them into the asteroid field ahead, they will risk burning out." Elias blinked at her. "And how exactly do you know that?" Liara hesitated for only a moment. "I have studied tactics." Elias didn't have time to argue. He swung the ship toward the asteroid field. The pirates followed immediately, weapons fire streaking past the hull. The freighter shuddered, alarms blaring, shields holding. Elias growled, gripping the controls. "Barely. Cut speed by 10%, Liara instructed. "Then roll right now." Elias obeyed, and to his surprise the maneuver sent the nearest pirate ship spiraling dangerously close to an asteroid. It pulled away at the last moment, its engines roaring. "Not bad," Elias muttered, stealing a glance at her. Liara's eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, her expression calm and focused. Again. Left this time. Together they wove the freighter through the dense rocks. The pirates pursued, but as Liara predicted, their engines began to overheat under the strain of sharp turns. One ship broke off, smoke trailing from its thrusters. The second pressed on stubbornly, but Elias and Liara worked as one. At her signal, Elias cut power suddenly, and the pirate ship overshot them, straight into the path of a massive asteroid. The impact shattered it into flaming debris. The silence that followed was broken only by Elias's laugh of relief. "Well, I'll be damned. We actually pulled it off." Liara leaned back in her chair, her breathing steady. "It was necessary." Elias turned to her, eyes narrowed. "That wasn't luck. You knew exactly what you were doing." For a moment she met his gaze. Then she looked away. "I learned some things before all this." After the battle, the ship drifted into quiet space once more. Elias ran a systems check, making sure the hull hadn't suffered too much damage. The freighter was scratched and dented, but still flight-worthy. He found Liara in the mess hall later, calmly repairing a damaged circuit board with tools she had found. "You handled yourself well back there," Elias said, leaning against the doorway. She didn't look up. "I did only what was needed. You saved our lives." That made her pause. Slowly, she lifted her eyes to meet his. For a moment, her expression softened. "And you trusted me without question." Elias shrugged. "Didn't have much of a choice." He gave a half smile. "Still, you knew more about pirate ships than most smugglers I've ever met. You're not exactly who Jorik made you out to be, are you?" Liara's hands tightened slightly around the tools. She set them down carefully. "There are things I cannot yet speak of. Not because I do not trust you, but because the truth could bring danger greater than pirates." Elias studied her for a long moment. Her voice carried no deception. Whatever secret she held, it was heavy, too heavy to be spoken lightly. "Fair enough," he said at last. "I won't push. But for what it's worth, you don't have to pretend with me. Not on this ship." A faint smile touched her lips, gone almost as quickly as it appeared. "You are unlike most men I have met." "Humans tend to get that a lot," Elias replied, grinning. The shared story. That night, as the ship cruised quietly, Elias found Liara again at the viewport. She stood with her hands clasped behind her back, staring at the endless scatter of stars. "Can't sleep?" Elias asked, stepping beside her. "Sleep comes slowly," she admitted. "The stars remind me of things I cannot forget." Elias leaned against the wall. "Want to talk about it?" Liara hesitated. "Not everything, but I can share a little." She spoke softly, her words careful. "I was not always as you see me now. Once I lived among people who expected me to be silent, graceful, and unseen. When I tried to be more, they did not approve, so I learned to hide what I knew." Elias listened without interrupting. There was pain in her voice, but also strength. "You're not the only one who's had to fight against expectations," he said finally. "Back on Earth, I wasn't supposed to be a pilot. My family wanted me to stay on the ground, take a safe job. But I couldn't. The stars, they called me. So I left." Liara's eyes turned toward him, searching. "And do you regret it?" "Not for a second," Elias said with a smile. "It's not an easy life, but it's mine." For the first time since she had come aboard, Liara's expression warmed. "Perhaps we are not so different." The quiet bond over. The next few days, something unspoken grew between them. It was not romance, not yet, but a steady trust, built through shared danger and quiet moments. Liara continued to surprise Elias. She repaired broken systems, memorized navigation charts in minutes, and even suggested more efficient trade routes. She carried herself with the dignity of someone who had once held authority, not servitude. One evening, as Elias prepared a meal in the mess hall, Liara entered quietly. "You should rest," she said softly. Elias smirked. "You sound like you're the captain now." Her lips curved in the faintest smile. "Perhaps I'm learning from you." They shared the meal together, speaking of small things, the strange foods of different planets, the odd habits of alien traders, the endless bureaucracy of the Galactic Council. For once the weight of secrets and dangers seemed far away, foreshadow of storms. But peace never lasted long in the outer colonies. As Elias checked the navigation charts for their next destination, a flashing red signal appeared on his screen, a broadcast repeating over and over, "Attention, missing individual of high importance, reward for information leading to recovery, extreme caution advised." The image that appeared made Elias's blood run cold. It was Liara. Her face, unmistakable even in the grainy picture, stared back at him. Elias leaned back in his chair, heart pounding. She wasn't just a servant. She wasn't just a woman running from her past. Whoever she truly was, the galaxy wanted her back, and he was the one protecting her. The dim light of the cockpit reflected off Captain Elias Kane's tired face as he stared at the glowing screen in front of him. The image on the broadcast repeated over and over, a silver-skinned woman with violet eyes. There was no mistaking it. It was Liara. The message was short but heavy with meaning. Missing royal heir of House Valar. Substantial reward for information. Extreme caution advised. Elias leaned back in his chair, running a hand over his face. "Royal heir?" he muttered. His mind raced. All this time, Liara had been traveling quietly on his ship, fixing circuits, cooking meals, helping him dodge pirates, yet the galaxy saw her as a princess. He thought back to her calm during the ambush, the elegance in her every move, the way she carried herself even when she tried to hide it. Suddenly, everything made sense. But sense did not make things easier. The confrontation. He found Liara in the cargo bay, carefully organizing the crates they were transporting. Her silver-toned skin glowed faintly in the soft lights. She looked calm, but Elias's heart pounded as he stepped closer. "Liara," he said quietly. She turned, her violet eyes meeting his. "Yes, Captain?" Elias hesitated. The words tasted heavy on his tongue. "I saw the broadcast." For a moment her expression didn't change. Then her gaze dropped, her hands pausing over the crate she had been touching. Silence filled the space between them, broken only by the faint hum of the engines. "I was hoping it would not reach us so soon," she said finally, her voice soft. "So it's true?" Elias pressed. "You're not just..." "Some servant Jorik handed over to me." "You're..." He stopped himself, the word feeling unreal. "A princess?" Liara's lips pressed into a thin line. She looked up again, her eyes filled with both strength and sorrow. "Yes, I am Liara Valar, daughter of the High Sovereign of the Valar dynasty. I am the rightful heir to one of the wealthiest and most powerful thrones in the galaxy." The truth hung in the air like a heavy weight. Elias let out a slow breath, shaking his head. "So Jorik sold me a princess as if you were cargo." Liara's voice was calm, but her eyes shone with pain. "To my enemies, I was worth more hidden as a slave than standing as an heir." The story of betrayal. They sat together in the mess hall later, the stars drifting silently outside the viewport. Liara finally told him what had happened. "There was betrayal within my own house," she began. "Some wished to seize power. They could not kill me openly. Such an act would have shattered our people. So they arranged for me to disappear. During a diplomatic voyage, my ship was attacked. Loyal guards were slain. I was taken, my identity erased, and I was sold. Like an object." Elias clenched his fists under the table. The idea of someone treating her like that made his blood burn. "And Jorik ended up with you?" Liara nodded. "Yes, he did not know who I was. Few would dare to believe a princess could fall so low. He only saw me as a way to repay his debts. But in a way," her eyes met his, "perhaps fate was kinder than I thought, for it placed me on your ship." Elias looked away, uncomfortable under the weight of her words. He wasn't used to being called anyone's fate. The growing danger, now that the truth was out, danger loomed heavier than before. Word of Liara's survival would spread quickly. Those who betrayed her would not want her alive to reclaim her throne. Elias knew the smart thing to do. Hand her over to the authorities. Claim the reward and wash his hands of the mess. But every time he looked at her, at the quiet strength in her eyes, at the way she carried both dignity and sorrow, he knew he couldn't. That night, While Elias plotted their course away from the main trade routes, Liara entered the cockpit. "You should not risk yourself for me," she said softly. Elias didn't look up from the controls. "I'm not leaving you behind, so stop suggesting it." Her lips curved in the faintest smile. Humans, always so stubborn. Rumors on the station a few days later they docked at a neutral star station to resupply. The station was crowded, filled with merchants, mercenaries, and drifters from across the galaxy. Elias tried to keep a low profile, but whispers of Liara's face were already everywhere. As they walked through the markets, Elias overheard two traders speaking in hushed voices. "They say the Valar princess is alive." Nonsense. If she were, the dynasty would have announced it. Still, there's a bounty. Someone wants her silenced. Elias's jaw tightened. He glanced at Liara, who walked calmly at his side, hood drawn over her pale hair. To anyone else, she was just another traveler. But Elias could see the tension in her posture, the way her eyes scanned every shadow. Later, while loading supplies, Elias was approached by a stranger, a tall man with sharp features and a cloak that hid most of his face. "You're a long way from home, human," the man said. "Be careful what company you keep. Some faces draw the wrong kind of attention." Elias gave a hard look. "You talking about me or my crew?" The stranger only smirked and walked away, leaving behind a sense of unease. The question of trust back on the ship, Elias confronted Liara again. "People are looking for you, not just bounty hunters. You've got enemies in high places." Liara sat across from him, her hands folded neatly. "Yes, which is why I never wished for you to know the truth. Now you are in danger as well." Elias leaned forward. "Danger finds me either way. But let me ask you this. What happens if we reach your people? Will they welcome you back, or will they try to silence you too?" For the first time, doubt flickered in her eyes. I do not know. Some still serve my family with loyalty. Others have chosen greed." Elias rubbed his temple. "So either we run forever, or we gamble on the loyalty of strangers." "Great choices." Liara's voice softened. "You do not have to stay, Captain. I will find my way alone if it spares you." Elias looked at her sharply. "Not a chance. I didn't take you aboard to abandon you. If you're in this fight, so am I." Her violet eyes glistened just for a moment before she lowered her gaze. Then, "Thank you." The human spirit. That night, Elias lay awake in his cabin staring at the ceiling. He had flown through war zones, smuggled goods past patrols, fought pirates, but never had he felt the weight of protecting something so important. Liara wasn't just cargo. She wasn't even just a woman who had been wronged. She was a symbol. If she lived, her people might hope again. If she died, her dynasty might fall into ruin. And here he was, a single human caught in the middle of galactic politics. "Humans don't get involved," he muttered to himself. "We survive. That's what we do." But deep down he knew the truth. Survival wasn't enough. Not anymore. The bond deepens. The next day, Elias found Liara sitting quietly in the observation deck, staring at the stars as she often did. He joined her, sitting in silence for a while. Finally, he spoke. "You ever wonder why the stars are so far apart?" She glanced at him, puzzled. "Why?" "Because if they were closer, they'd burn each other out. Maybe it's the same with people. Some keep their distance to protect themselves." Liara tilted her head, considering his words. "And yet, some stars shine brighter together." Their eyes met, and for a long moment no words were needed. The omen, just as peace settled between them, the ship's warning systems blared. An incoming transmission lit up the console. "This is Commander Drevel of the Syndicate," a cold voice declared. "We know you are harboring the missing heir. Surrender her and we may let you live." Elias cursed under his breath. He glanced at Liara, whose expression had hardened into quiet steel. "They will not stop," she said firmly. "Not until I am silenced forever." Elias set his jaw. "Then we don't give them what they want." The ship shook as enemy vessels closed in, their weapons locking on. Elias gripped the controls, determination burning in his chest. He might have been just one human, but he wasn't about to let the galaxy decide Liara's fate, not while he still had fight left in him. The horizon's edge shook under the first barrage of enemy fire. Warning lights flashed across the cockpit as Captain Elias Kane gripped the controls tightly. Two sleek Syndicate warships had locked onto them, closing in fast. Their weapons were far stronger than anything his freighter carried. "Shields are failing," the ship's computer announced in a cold, mechanical voice. Elias cursed under his breath. "Hold together, girl. he muttered to the ship. Just hold together. Beside him, Liara stood calmly, her violet eyes fixed on the display. They are not trying to destroy us yet, she said evenly. They want me alive. Yeah, well, I'd rather they didn't get either of us, Elias replied sharply. The freighter dove into a dense cluster of asteroids. Massive rocks drifted lazily, spinning in the dark void, some as large as small moons. The Syndicate ships followed without hesitation, their weapons firing bright streams of energy that lit up the blackness. Elias swerved between the rocks, sweat dripping down his brow. We can't outrun them forever, he said through gritted teeth. Liara placed her hand lightly on the console. There is a way. If you head toward the gas giant ahead, its magnetic storms can hide us. Elias shot her a quick look. That's suicide. The storms tear ships apart. Not if you fly with precision, Liara answered, her tone calm but firm. Trust me. Elias let out a dry laugh. You always say that right before things get crazy. But he followed her instructions anyway. The horizon's edge angled toward the distant swirling planet, its red and gold clouds flashing with violent bursts of lightning. Behind them, the Syndicate ships pressed closer. Into the storm as they entered the upper atmosphere. The freighter was rocked by violent turbulence. The hull groaned under the strain, alarms screaming in protest. Structural integrity at 60%, the computer warned. Don't tell me. Tell the storm, Elias snapped. Lightning forked across the sky, striking dangerously close. Elias fought to keep control, his hand steady despite the chaos. Adjust 15 degrees left, Liara instructed calmly. The currents are strongest there, but they will scatter their sensors. Elias obeyed. The ship jolted violently, but just as she said, the Syndicate signals began to weaken. They've lost partial lock, Elias said, relief slipping into his voice. But Liara's expression remained serious. They will not give up. We must be ready. After the escape hours later, when the storm finally thinned, the horizon's edge drifted in the shadow of the planet's outer ring. The Syndicate ships had fallen behind. But Elias knew it was only temporary. He leaned back in his chair, exhausted, while Liara checked the navigation system. You saved us again, Elias said, glancing at her. If it weren't for you, we'd be dust. Liara shook her head. You are the one who flew us through the storm. Many would have failed. Elias smiled faintly. You always know how to make me feel like less of a fool. For a moment, the tension between them eased. The danger was not gone, but in the quiet shadow of the gas giant, they could breathe again. The question of return later in the mess hall, Elias set a steaming cup in front of Liara. She accepted it with a quiet nod, her graceful hands wrapping around the mug. You said once that you didn't know if your people would even welcome you back. Elias began carefully. Do you still believe that? Liara's eyes lowered. Yes, if I return, there will be conflict. Some will stand with me, but others will see me as a threat to their power. Elias leaned forward. And what happens if you don't return? If you stay hidden forever? Her gaze lifted slowly to meet his. Then my people will remain divided. The Syndicate and other powers will carve pieces from my dynasty until nothing remains. My disappearance would become the excuse for their ambitions. Elias rubbed the back of his neck. So either you go back and risk war, or you stay away and watch your people fall apart. Liara's lips curved in a faint, bitter smile, a choice between two storms. Silence stretched between them. Elias could see the weight in her eyes, the burden of leadership she had never asked for but could not escape. The human answer. Finally, Elias spoke. On Earth, we've had leaders who were betrayed, kingdoms that fell apart. But we've also had people who refused to give up. They fought back even when the odds were impossible. Sometimes, all it took was one person standing up at the right moment. Liara studied him quietly. Do you believe I can be that person? Elias shrugged. I don't know. But I do know one thing, you're not alone anymore. Whatever you decide, I'm with you. Her violet eyes softened, glimmering faintly in the low light. You speak with such certainty, it is comforting. The Syndicate's net the comfort did not last long. Within days, Syndicate patrols began appearing in nearly every system they passed. It was clear that word of Liara's survival had spread. Elias cursed under his breath as they received another warning broadcast while approaching a refueling station. This system is under Syndicate control. All ships subject to inspection. Failure to comply will result in destruction. They're closing the net, Elias muttered. Doesn't matter where we go, they'll be waiting. Liara placed a hand gently on his arm. Then we must not run anymore. He turned to her, eyebrows raised. What are you saying? She stood tall, her expression resolute. It is time I stop hiding. If my enemies know I live, then my allies must know as well. We must find those still loyal to my house. Elias exhaled slowly, studying her. There was no fear in her eyes, only determination. That's a dangerous gamble. Her lips curved faintly. So is trusting a human pilot with the fate of a princess. And yet I did. The first step toward return, they plotted a course to the remote moon of Calros, a place Liara believed still held loyalists to her family. It was a harsh, icy world, far from the Syndicate's main routes. The journey there was tense. Every sensor ping, every faint signal on the radar made Elias's heart race. But Liara remained calm, as though her decision had finally lifted a weight from her. When they descended onto the frozen surface, Elias scanned the horizon. Snowstorms raged endlessly, and the landscape stretched into white emptiness. Not much of a welcome, Elias muttered. Liara stepped forward, her silver hair whipping in the cold wind. Appearances can deceive. Sure enough, hidden beneath the ice cliffs, they found signs of life, dim lights, faint power readings. A secret outpost. The Loyalists. Inside the outpost, a group of cloaked figures waited. Their faces were cautious, but when Liara removed her hood, gasps filled the chamber. Princess Liara, one of them whispered, bowing low. We thought you were lost. Liara's voice carried both warmth and command. I was lost. But I am here now, and I will not let the dynasty fall. The Loyalists rallied around her, pledging their support. Elias watched from the side, impressed. She wasn't just surviving anymore, she was leading, but he also noticed the fear in their eyes. They knew what her return would mean. War. The private moment. That night, as the outpost settled into uneasy quiet, Elias found Liara standing outside beneath the frozen sky. Stars glittered above, sharp and cold. You sure about this? He asked softly. She turned to him, her face illuminated by the starlight. No, but certainty is a luxury I no longer have. Elias nodded slowly. You could still walk away, you know. Disappear. Live free. Her violet eyes lingered on him, filled with both gratitude and sorrow. I could, but freedom only has meaning if I use it to help those who have none. High people need me. Elias studied her for a long moment, then gave a small smile. That's the difference between you and me. I run from storms. You walk into them. Her lips curved in the faintest smile. And yet you are still here, walking beside me. Elias chuckled softly. Yeah, I guess I'm crazier than I thought. The vow as the icy winds howled around them. Liara reached out, her hand resting lightly on his arm. Whatever comes, she said quietly. Thank you for not treating me as a prize or a burden or a throne to be won. You saw me as a person when no one else did. Elias looked into her violet eyes, seeing both the princess and the woman within. And I'll keep seeing you that way, no matter what. For a moment they stood in silence, the weight of their shared path binding them together. Then, from the distance, the sound of approaching engines broke the stillness. The Syndicate had found them again. The choice had been made. There was no turning back. Liara was no longer hiding. She was ready to fight, and Elias was ready to fight beside her. The cold winds of Calros whipped through the icy cliffs, carrying the faint scent of ozone from distant storms. Captain Elias Kane tightened his jacket and looked around the small outpost. The Loyalists who had hidden here were now preparing for battle. Supplies were gathered, weapons polished, and communications restored to contact allies of the Valar dynasty. Liara stood in the center of the room, her silver hair catching the light from the faint lamps. Her violet eyes glimmered with determination, reflecting the responsibility she had carried for so long. She had survived betrayal, capture, and exile, but the final test was about to begin. Elias approached her quietly. You ready for this? He asked. She gave a faint nod. There is no other choice. My people are waiting, my enemies are moving, and if I delay, more will suffer. Elias looked at her, admiration and concern mixed in his gaze. You know you don't have to do it alone. We fight this together. Liara's lips curved into a brief, almost imperceptible smile. I know, and I am grateful for that. More than you will ever know. The approach to Valar City, the journey to the capital of the Valar dynasty, was tense. Syndicate patrols had tightened their search, forcing the small fleet of loyalists on the horizon's edge to take secret paths through asteroid belts and uncharted systems. Every day, Elias and Liara worked together, plotting routes, evading scanners, and repairing minor damage from micro-asteroid collisions. During one quiet moment in hyperspace, Elias studied the princess. You ever think about what it will be like? When you walk into the capital and everyone sees you alive. Liara's gaze was distant, thoughtful. I have imagined it. But imagination cannot prepare one for the reality. Many will rejoice, but others will resent me for returning. They have already taken positions of power in my absence. Elias shook his head. Sounds like politics everywhere. But you survived worse and you never gave up. That counts for a lot. Liara looked at him with a mix of gratitude and surprise. Your faith in me, it is stronger than the loyalty of some of my own people. He smiled. Humans don't back down when they believe in someone. That's the difference. The first skirmish as they neared the outskirts of Valar City, their fleet was ambushed by syndicate mercenaries. The icy plains became a battlefield. Lasers cutting across the white snow and ice. Small explosions scattering shards of frozen rock. Elias took the controls of the horizon's edge, weaving through enemy fire with precision. Liara guided him with calm, sharp commands, her tactical knowledge surpassing even seasoned pilots. Right flank. Take cover behind that ridge, she shouted. The loyalists moved swiftly, following her directions. Within hours, they had outmaneuvered the mercenaries and secured a temporary position near a canyon. Breathing heavily, Elias glanced at Liara. I don't know how you do it. You're amazing, she shook her head. I have been trained for this since childhood. But training alone would not have saved us. Trust in those around you, is what made the difference. Elias felt a warmth spread through him. She trusted him and he trusted her. Together they had survived impossible odds. The return to the capital at last. The walls of Valar City rose in the distance, glimmering silver against the sky. The loyalists cheered quietly. Some had tears in their eyes. They had waited years for this moment. Elias stood beside Liara on the bridge of the lead ship. This is it, he said softly. Liara's hands rested on the railing. Yes, this is it. No more hiding. The moment they entered the city, word spread quickly. Citizens crowded the streets, curious and anxious. When Liara appeared, hood down and standing tall, the crowd erupted in whispers and exclamations. She's alive! Princess Liara. Long live the heir! The syndicate agents and traitors in hiding were caught off guard. Their plots to control the dynasty were failing faster than they could react. Facing the enemies, Liara walked through the city with Elias beside her. The loyalists flanked her, and the citizens formed a protective line. She had been trained for diplomacy, for command, but nothing had prepared her for the mixture of fear, awe, and hope in the faces of her people. When they reached the palace, the remaining traitors had gathered a small militia. They confronted her, weapons drawn, attempting to assert control. You are not the ruler, one of them shouted. You are a fugitive. Leave now and perhaps we spare your allies. Liara's voice rang clear, confident, and strong. I am Liara Valar, heir to this dynasty, and I am here not to fight my people, but to protect them from those who would see our house destroyed. Her words struck something in the hearts of the citizens and loyalists alike. The traitors faltered, their authority crumbling as the crowd's loyalty shifted to Liara. Elias moved slightly ahead, standing beside her. Humans fight for what's right, he said quietly. Sometimes that means standing against impossible odds. She's right, and we're not going anywhere. Liara glanced at him, a mixture of relief and gratitude in her eyes. A new decree within the palace. Liara addressed her council. The practices that allowed servitude and oppression to continue are no longer acceptable. I decree the abolition of bonded servitude across our lands. Gasps filled the room. The councillors whispered among themselves. Elias, standing at the side, felt a surge of pride. Humanity's principles, the belief in freedom, dignity, and courage, had influenced this moment. Liara's decree would change countless lives. One councillor finally spoke. Princess, it will not be easy, Liara nodded firmly. Nothing worth achieving is ever easy. But it is right. The loyalists cheered, and citizens gathered outside the palace walls to hear the news. Elias watched as hope spread across the city, like sunlight piercing through a long storm. Recognition of humanity. After the city was secured, Liara invited Elias to stand beside her on the palace balcony before the citizens. My people, she began, her voice carrying across the square, I return to you not alone. I return with those who have shown honor, courage, and loyalty. Among them is a human, Captain Elias Kane, who risked his life to protect me when no one else would. His bravery is a reminder that the galaxy is wider than our own worlds, and that friendship and trust can cross any star. The citizens erupted in applause. Even those who had doubted the return of their princess now recognized the human beside her as a symbol of honor. Elias nodded humbly. I did what anyone would do, he said quietly to Liara. She smiled. Few would, Elias. Few have the courage to do what is right, not what is expected. A new era over the following weeks. Liara worked to restore order to the dynasty. The loyalists helped rebuild key sectors of the city, and the people rallied around their new leadership. Elias continued to serve as her ally, not as a servant, not as a soldier, but as a trusted friend and advisor. Together they forged alliances with neighboring systems, ensuring that the dynasty would not fall prey to future threats. Liara often spoke of humans to her council. Their strength is not in numbers nor in power. It is in the will to do what is right. Captain Kane has reminded us of that. The HFY spirit, the idea that humans are courageous, clever, and honorable, spread across the galaxy. Many began to see humans not as minor players, but as beings capable of shaping the future. A personal moment one evening, Elias found Liara in the palace gardens. Snowflakes drifted gently around them, and the soft glow of lamps reflected in the ice. You did it, he said, smiling. You came back and you changed everything. Liara looked at him, her expression both gentle and proud. I could not have done it without you. You reminded me that courage is not measured by birth or title, but by action. Elias shook his head. You did all the hard work. I just stood beside you. She reached out, her hand brushing his. And that is what makes you remarkable. You see people, not titles. You see worth, not convenience. Elias smiled softly, feeling a warmth he had not known in years. Then I guess humans really can make a difference. Liara's violet eyes sparkled in the lamplight. Yes, and together we can ensure that no one ever forgets it. The future ahead, the galaxy took note. Word of Liara's return, her decree to abolish servitude, and the human who stood beside her spread like wildfire. Across star systems, humans were no longer considered minor players. They were recognized for their courage, intelligence, and honor. For Elias, it was more than recognition. It was proof that one person's choice, one human's integrity, could change the course of history. And for Liara, it was the affirmation that her people, her family, and her future were not defined by betrayal or fear, but by courage, loyalty, and trust. As the stars shone brightly above Valar City, Elias and Liara looked out over their people, ready to face whatever came next. Together, the galaxy had witnessed the rise of a princess and the strength of a human, and for the first time in a long while, hope was more powerful than fear.